Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. I swear, this all started because of a banana, not a metaphor, not some deep symbol for betrayal or emotional rot. Just a stupid half-green banana I tossed into my cart at Middleton Square Mall because I hadn't eaten all day and my hands were shaking. That's when she saw me, Melody. 2 years, zero contact. And she saw me holding a banana. She didn't say anything at first. I didn't either. We just stood there, me in front of a smoothie stand, her behind a baby stroller, both pretending we weren't about to explode internally. My ears rang, her lips twitched. The baby, his baby, dropped a pacifier. And all I could think was, why did I wear these socks? See, I wasn't supposed to be there. I was supposed to be in Denver, on a work trip that got canceled at the last minute, because my boss had the flu and decided to cough directly into our company's shared Google Calendar. So I came to the mall to buy socks and maybe feel like I still had control over something in my life. But now I was face to face with the woman who cracked my world like an egg and looked like she'd barely lost sleep over it. Let me rewind. No, I'm not going to give you some romantic backstory or tell you how we fell in love over jazz records and pancakes. This isn't a movie. This is real and messy and sometimes smells like cologne you no longer wear, because it reminds you of someone who said they needed space while secretly packing her toothbrush for someone else's apartment. The last time I saw Melody, she had a suitcase in one hand and a wine glass in the other. She said, "Eli, don't make this harder than it already is." I said nothing, because I'd already lost. She left me for a guy who managed a bike shop and called himself Zen with a beard, a guy who thought budgeting was too corporate and who gave their baby a name that sounds like a candle scent. And now, here she was, at the mall, in leggings and sunglasses like some suburban spy. She finally spoke. "Eli, wow, you look..." I waited for the word. Tired, older, alone, like someone who still eats cereal for dinner. Different. She smiled, and I realized what it was. That look people give stray animals. Pity mixed with confusion. Like she was surprised I was still alive. I nodded. I wanted to walk away, but my legs didn't move. Then, before I could say anything, her baby, his baby, reached for me, and I swear to you on that half-ripe banana, that moment changed everything. She crouched down to pick up the pacifier, and I swear I saw her hand trembling, not from fear, Melody was never the fearful type, but from something harder to read. Guilt, shock. Maybe she never expected to see me again, unless I accidentally liked one of her Instagram photos from 74 weeks ago. But there I was, standing in front of her with a banana in one hand and a pair of discount socks in the other, looking like the ghost of decisions past. I wanted to say something clever or cold, something that would leave a mark. Instead, all that came out was a hoarse, "Hi." Pathetic. She blinked, then laughed softly, that same breathy laugh she used when trying to diffuse an argument. "Hi, Eli," she said, like we were running into each other at a high school reunion, not like she hadn't detonated my entire life and walked away holding someone else's hand. I couldn't stop staring at the baby. Big hazel eyes, a tiny blue onesie. He was sucking on a corner of the stroller like it owed him money. He looked peaceful. He didn't ask to be part of this story, and yet here he was, living proof of every night I cried alone into my pillow, wondering what I did wrong. "I didn't think you still lived around here," she said, adjusting the diaper bag over her shoulder. She looked tired, not messy tired like I was, but the kind of tired you get when you build a new life too quickly and pretend you're happy, just long enough to realize you're not. "I thought you moved to Colorado or something." "Utah," I replied. It wasn't a lie. I almost moved to Utah. I looked up apartments. I even scheduled a tour. Then I chickened out at the airport when I saw a couple holding hands in the terminal, and it reminded me too much of us. But I stayed. Somehow we stood there for a second too long, and shoppers began moving around us like we were statues. Background noise? I didn't care. My heart was pounding in my ears. She tilted her head. "You look different." "Yeah, divorce and betrayal will do that," I said. It came out sharper than I expected. Her lips pressed into a thin line. For a moment, I almost regretted saying it. Almost. She didn't deny anything. That's what got me. "No. I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean for it to happen." Just silence. And then she said the one thing I never thought I'd hear her say again. "Can we talk?" Talk? After 2 years of nothing? After vanishing from my world like I was a chapter she'd ripped out of her book? I should have walked away. But I didn't. Because I'm Eli, and Eli doesn't know when to stop hoping. We ended up sitting across from each other at one of those tiny mall cafe tables, the kind with chipped corners and gum stuck to the underside. I remember the sound of the fountain behind us splashing rhythmically, like some background soundtrack that made everything feel even more surreal. She sat down first, without asking if I was comfortable. Melody always did that, took up space like it belonged to her, and waited for you to catch up. The stroller was parked at her side, and the baby had fallen asleep as if the universe had muted the tension on purpose. I didn't want to be there. Every fiber of me wanted to stand up, throw the banana in the trash, and leave. But there I was, knees shaking under the table, heart racing like I was 17 again, and asking her to prom, not reliving the worst emotional train wreck of my life. "I didn't know you'd still be around," she repeated. Her voice was quieter now, maybe because she was trying not to wake the baby, or maybe because she knew what was coming. "You disappeared after everything. You didn't even respond to the letter." I blinked. "What letter?" She looked confused. "I mailed you something, right after the divorce." I wanted to explain, "No, you didn't," I said quickly, and it came out bitter. "You wanted to clear your conscience. There's a difference." Her eyes flinched at that, just slightly, and I hated myself for still reading her so well. I remembered every version of that face: joy, anger, guilt. And here I was, witnessing a blend of all three. I hadn't seen her in 2 years, but my body remembered the pain like it had been yesterday. You don't forget betrayal. You just learn to carry it without letting it crush you. "I was confused," she said suddenly. "I didn't mean to hurt you the way I did. Travis, he was just new," I finished for her. "He was new. And I was the old life, the stable one. The one who folded laundry while you were texting him under the dinner table." She didn't deny it. I could see it in her eyes. The silent admission that everything I suspected had been true all along. I clenched my jaw and looked away, trying not to let her see how hard I was shaking. This wasn't closure. This was excavation. She wasn't trying to make things right. She was just trying to soften her own guilt. "Why now?" I asked, eyes fixed on a plastic tray someone had left behind. "Why talk to me now?" Her voice dropped. "Because I've been thinking about you more than I should. And because things with Travis aren't what I thought they'd be." There it was, the unraveling. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Her silence filled in all the gaps. Maybe he got tired of playing the spontaneous role. Maybe he realized that real life doesn't run on passion alone. Or maybe he just wasn't built to last, unlike me, the one she left. She leaned in and whispered, "Eli, you don't hate me, do you?" And for the first time since she left, I laughed. Not out of joy, not out of spite, but because it was such a ridiculous question. Hate her? I wished I could. I wanted to. But the truth was worse. I still missed her. I wish I could say I handled it with dignity. That I sipped my coffee, nodded politely, and said something poetic like, "Time heals all wounds." But the truth is, I couldn't stop staring at her hands. She had a faint scar on her left knuckle from when she dropped a glass in our kitchen 4 years ago. I remembered how I wrapped it for her with a dish towel, and she joked that I would have made a great nurse. And now, those same hands were holding a paper cup with decaf oat milk something across from me like none of it had happened. Like I wasn't still digging myself out of the emotional crater she left behind. "I still dream about our kitchen," she said suddenly, eyes flicking to the table like she was afraid of mine. "The way it smelled when you made that awful chili, and how you used to hum when you did the dishes." I almost smiled. Almost. But it caught in my throat and turned to a lump I couldn't swallow. Was I supposed to feel honored? Touched? She remembered the scent of our life together while raising someone else's child? "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, not hiding the sharpness in my voice. "So I can be flattered while you go back to your other life and pretend this didn't happen?" She looked up and her face actually softened. "Because I think about you more than I should. And because sometimes I wonder if I made the worst decision of my life. That part. That's the part that broke me. Because I'd waited 2 years to hear her say something, anything close to that. I used to imagine it late at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she regretted it even for a second. And now, here she was, in front of me, saying the words I used to beg the universe for. But instead of giving me peace, it made me feel worse, because I knew exactly what would happen next. "You're not happy with him," I said. It wasn't a question. She shook her head slowly. "No, he was fun, wild. For a while, I felt like I was living out some fantasy. But reality caught up. He's impulsive. He quit his job last month to start a kombucha business. We're behind on rent. He disappears for hours without explanation. I keep thinking, I left calm for chaos." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just sat there with my insides churning like a sink full of dirty water. She was giving me everything I wanted too late, and I hated how much I still wanted it. Then she leaned forward and lowered her voice. "I'm not asking you to fix anything. I just needed to see if you were okay." I wanted to say I wasn't, that I was still hurting, that I still woke up sometimes reaching for the side of the bed she used to warm, that I couldn't look at Sunday mornings the same way anymore because she ruined pancakes and flannel robes and the quiet hum of coffee brewing. But I didn't say any of that. I said the only thing I could without falling apart in public. "I'm surviving." And then she whispered, "Would you ever want to come by, just to talk?" Just to talk. That phrase echoed in my head like a trap door creaking open. Because no one ever means just to talk. I told her I needed time to think. Not because I was being careful, but because if I had answered right then, I would have said yes. And that terrified me. We sat in silence for another minute before I stood up and said I needed to go. She didn't argue. She just nodded, eyes down, hands gripping the edge of her coffee cup like it might float away if she didn't hold on. The walk back to my car was a blur. I don't remember the food court, the parking lot, or even unlocking the door. But I remember the moment I closed it behind me, dropped the banana, and leaned against the window like the entire mall had caved in on me. I didn't sleep that night. My head spun with 1,000 versions of that conversation. Some where I said everything I'd held back. Others where I walked out without a word. But the one that haunted me most was the one that had actually happened. Her soft voice. The hesitation. The way she looked at me, not like a lover or even an ex, but something more dangerous, a possibility. I hadn't felt like a possibility in a long time. The next morning, I told myself I'd forget it. Get back to my routine, organize the spice cabinet, vacuum the hallway, maybe even read one of the self-help books I bought and never opened. But just after noon, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, I understand if you never want to, but if you change your mind, here's my address." No name, no emojis, just that. But I knew it was her. She didn't say Travis, not once, not during our talk, not in the message. That told me more than any confession ever could. I stared at that text for hours. Every time I tried to do something else, wash dishes, write emails, fold laundry, I found myself coming back to it, like it had a gravitational pull. I thought about how quickly she'd moved on from me, and how easily she seemed to unravel now that life wasn't so romantic with her kombucha dreamer. Part of me wanted to go just to see how far she'd fallen, just to satisfy that ugly part of myself that still wanted proof I was never the problem. But the other part, the softer, sadder part, just wanted to hear her say she missed me again, even if it was a lie, even if I knew better. Around 4 p.m., I grabbed my keys. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I didn't even dress up. Just threw on the same hoodie I wore the day she left. Maybe I wanted her to see that I hadn't changed. Or maybe I wanted her to see I had. Her place was on the edge of town, near the old warehouse district. Not fancy, not miserable, just temporary looking. The kind of place you only stay in when you're either rebuilding or running. I parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest. When I knocked, I didn't expect her to answer so fast. But there she was, hair in a messy bun, socks mismatched, no makeup. And somehow, she looked more real than she ever had when we were married. Her eyes welled up instantly, and she said my name like it hurt her throat. "Eli." I stepped inside. The air smelled like baby wipes and burnt toast. Toys were scattered across the living room floor. A folded-up futon leaned against the wall. There was no sign of him. No backpack, no jacket, not even a pair of shoes. She looked at me, then back toward the hallway. And that's when she whispered, "He left 2 days ago." I don't think he's coming back. When she said he was gone, I didn't believe her. At least, not at first. I scanned the apartment for any hint of a lie. Shoes near the door, a coffee mug, a shadow in the hallway. But the silence was too complete. The apartment was messy in a way she would have never allowed when we were together. That told me more than words ever could. Her voice trembled when she said it again. He packed a bag and said he needed space. I haven't heard from him since I wanted to say something. Ask why she was telling me, why I should care, why she thought I'd step back into a story she'd already rewritten without me. But my words were caught in my chest. The baby started crying from the back room. She flinched, apologized like it was her fault, and disappeared down the hallway. I stayed frozen in the doorway, hands still in the pockets of my hoodie. I wasn't supposed to be here. I had made peace with this part of my life being over, or at least I thought I had. But standing there, in her tiny apartment with cracked tile and faint echoes of the life we never got to finish, everything unraveled, not in a dramatic fireworks kind of way, just slowly, quietly, like water dripping from a faucet long after you've turned it off. She came back carrying the baby, his baby, and to my surprise, she didn't try to hide the exhaustion on her face. "He doesn't sleep unless someone's holding him," she said, settling into the couch. I stayed standing. I wasn't ready to sit. She looked up at me again, eyes softer this time. "I know I don't deserve to ask you anything, Eli. But if you could just stay for a little while. I don't want to be alone tonight." That word, alone, landed hard, because it had been the one thing she had made me feel every day after she left. And now it was wrapped in vulnerability, handed back to me like an olive branch I didn't ask for. I paced toward the window, watching cars crawl past on the damp street outside. My fingers twitched like they wanted to text someone for advice, but I had no one left to ask. "I'm not here to fix anything," I finally said. "I just wanted to understand how you could walk away from someone who would have done anything for you." She nodded slowly, staring at the floor. "I ask myself that every day," she whispered, "and every time I do, I hate myself a little more." There it was, not an apology, but something real, something broken, something honest. I sat down. The baby stared at me with eyes too wide for someone who didn't ask to be born into this mess. Melody leaned her head back on the couch, eyes fluttering closed. "You were always the quiet one," she mumbled, "the safe place. I thought I needed the chaos, but I was wrong." I looked at her for a long time. Part of me wanted to reach out and say it was okay, that we all make mistakes, that we could start over. But the deeper, quieter part of me, the part she left behind, wasn't ready to forgive anything. "I'm not your safety net," I said. "Not anymore." She nodded, tears slipping down the side of her cheek. "I know. I just didn't know who else to call, and somehow that hurt more than anything she'd ever done." It was just after midnight when I found myself still sitting on that worn-out couch in her tiny living room. The baby had finally fallen asleep on Melody's chest, and she was curled up at the opposite end, barely breathing. She wasn't faking it. Her body had given up after holding everything together for too long. I could see it in her posture, the way her shoulders had dropped the moment she let herself relax in front of me. And that terrified me, because I'd seen her like this before. Just once, the night her father passed away. Back then, she had let me in without question. Back then, I belonged in her grief. Now, I was just a ghost passing through. I should have left. I knew it. But there was something about that moment, her silence, the stillness of the apartment, the way the refrigerator hummed like a distant heartbeat, that pulled me under. I leaned my head back and stared at the cracked ceiling. Every crack, every line reminded me of how fast things can fracture when no one's watching. I wasn't trying to feel anything, but emotions kept crawling in through the holes I thought I had patched years ago. That's when I saw it, on the end table, a photo frame, wooden, simple. Inside it was a picture of Melody holding the baby, smiling in a way I didn't recognize. Not fake, not forced, just resigned, and next to her in the photo, not Travis, not anyone, just her and the child. A part of me wanted to believe she had cut him out of the picture, but I knew better. That photo had always been that way. I stood up slowly, afraid to wake either of them, and wandered into the kitchen. The counter had a few dirty bottles, a stack of unopened mail, and a receipt for a bounced check. On the fridge, a magnet held up a list written in her handwriting: groceries, formula, rent, apply for child health card, and in the corner, call lawyer, with 2 question marks. That alone hit me harder than anything she'd said, because that list meant she was drowning, and she didn't want anyone to know. Suddenly I heard her shift on the couch. Her voice was raspy, like she was speaking from the edge of sleep. "You still walk around barefoot in the kitchen?" she mumbled. "You used to do that when you were thinking." I froze. I hadn't even realized I'd kicked my shoes off. She sat up slowly, blinking at me like she wasn't sure I was real. The baby stayed asleep in her lap. "I didn't invite you here to confuse you," she said quietly. "I just didn't know who else would actually come." Her honesty felt like a needle in my chest. I didn't want to be someone's last resort. I wanted to be wanted, not needed. And yet, I couldn't walk out. I didn't know if it was guilt, longing, or some twisted mix of both. But I stayed. "I can't save you, Melody," I said. "You know that, right?" She nodded slowly. "I'm not asking you to. I just needed to be reminded of what it felt like when I was still someone worth loving." That line tore through everything I had left. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. The pain in her voice didn't justify what she had done, but it did something worse. It made me remember why I loved her in the first place. She looked up at me, her voice barely a whisper. "Do you think there's ever a way back from something like this?" I didn't answer. I didn't know how. But the terrifying part? I wanted to try. The morning light spilled into the apartment like it was trying to erase everything that had happened the night before. I hadn't slept, but for once, I didn't feel drained. I sat in the armchair with a lukewarm cup of coffee. Melody made me sometime after 5 a.m. She didn't say much, just moved around the kitchen barefoot, quietly, almost as if she was afraid too many words would scare me off. The baby was still sleeping, curled into a blanket in the bedroom, his soft breathing barely audible. It should have been awkward. It should have felt like a mistake. But instead, there was this strange peace, not forgiveness, not yet, but something gentler, a pause in the chaos. We didn't rehash everything. There was no dramatic outpouring of regret, no grand speech. We just existed together, like two people who had seen each other at their worst and decided not to look away. She sat down across from me and looked tired, but not broken. "I know I don't get to ask for much," she said quietly. "But if you ever feel like stopping by again, even just for coffee, the door's open." I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect myself. But something in her voice was different. She wasn't begging. She wasn't manipulating. She was inviting me, not into her life, but into a moment. So I nodded. "I might," I said. Later that week, I did go back. Not because I had made a decision, but because I needed to see if what I felt that morning was real. And it was. The more time I spent around her, the less I thought about the past, and the more I noticed who she was now. She was tired, unsure, vulnerable, but she was also learning, changing, trying. And that mattered. We didn't rush into anything. I didn't move in, I didn't play house, but I showed up. For her, for the baby, for myself. And one afternoon, maybe 6 weeks later, she handed me a folded piece of paper. I thought it was a bill or a note about groceries. But when I opened it, it was a drawing, a scribbled stick figure family, done in crayon, with a baby in the middle and two taller figures holding his hands. Underneath, she had written, "No titles, just gratitude." That's when I realized something important. Sometimes love doesn't come back the same way it left. It returns changed, worn, slower, a little unsure. But if both people are willing to meet in the middle of that wreckage, something new can grow, and it might be even stronger than what was lost. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. Now it's your turn. Tell us in the comments, what's one historical event you wish you could have witnessed firsthand, just to understand how it truly felt? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next real story here on Reddit Confessions.